Think about this. Many mental health issues are triggered by a fear of the symptom more than anything that's happening externally. So for example, think about like public speaking. People that experience distress in front of large groups are oftentimes more worried about their physiological experience than they are the opinions of others. And as a consequence, they become hyper-focused on what is my heart rate doing? Are my palms sweaty? Am I going flush? And that fear, the fear of the heart rate elevating, leads to anxiety, which then leads to that elevated heart rate, which leads then to panic, right? It's the fear of the symptom that creates it, not so much what does the public think about me. The same is also true for men that struggle with erectile dysfunction. Fear of not getting an erection oftentimes leads to thoughts that are not super arousing and then leads to impotence. It's the fear itself that creates the problem. Even in cases of grief, oftentimes a person's fear of grieving uncontrollably or grieving too much leads to a very unpredictable expression of sadness and distress. In each of those cases, bereavement, erectile dysfunction, social anxiety, one of the best interventions is called a paradoxical intervention. This is where the therapist, instead of pushing the client to fix their behavior, the therapist encourages the client to lean towards the negative behavior. So for example, if somebody is fearful of speaking in front of large groups because of what their heart rate is going to do, the therapist may encourage the individual to expect the elevated heart rate. Don't be afraid of it. Lean towards it. Let's teach you how to give a speech when your heart rate is skyrocketing. Let's practice that. And all of a sudden, when the client has an elevated heart rate and learns that they're able to speak that way, guess what? They no longer fear it and the anxiety goes away. Same thing with the erectile dysfunction. Sex therapists often encourage couples to not have sex. You can do everything else, right? You're supposed to do everything else, but you are not allowed to have intercourse. It's off the table. Focus on pleasure, not performance. When the focus gets off of performance, all of a sudden the anxiety goes away and the guy is able to rise to the occasion. And even in grief, there's something called scheduling grief or worry time. Decide when you're going to be distressed. You're going to be sad. You just lost somebody important to you. So schedule time in once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, whatever it is, put it on the calendar where you are going to allow yourself to grieve. All of a sudden, the grief time is no longer something to run from. It's something to lean towards. All of a sudden, it becomes much more predictable and the erratic nature goes away. It's one of my favorite treatment interventions, whether we're talking about therapy or coaching. Thanks for listening.